Welcome, everybody, to today's show. We have a special episode planned for you guys. We actually don't even know how this is going to go today, but today, Michael and I are here in studio. We have Doug Gould joining us, Worship MD. He's on Zoom from Jersey. Thanks for joining us today, Doug. And then we also have Jonathan Cordero, who's been a worship pastor at several mega churches and is now currently pursuing music in a few ways. And we have Dwight, who's also been a worship pastor for a long time, worship leader, large churches, small church, I'm sure everything in between. And currently you're at Victory Point here is that in Holland proper? Okay.
North side Holland.
North side of Holland. Okay. And today we're going to be chatting, inspired from Doug, basically that worship leaders are different than techs a lot of the times. We see things differently. We come from different angles. But when that relationship is on point, when that relationship is fruitful, amazing things can happen for the organization, for your event, and on and on and on, for your volunteers, for your teams, for your culture, all of that kind of stuff. And so we're going to dive into, basically, I think we're going to call it worship leaders are from Mars and techs are from Venus.
I like that.
Yeah, you like that?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mars is bigger.
Mars is bigger, right, than Venus? I don't know. I think we're about to find that out.
Okay.
But real quick, just so that everybody knows, Doug has been on the show a couple of times now. This is his third time with us, and we love having him on. Your wisdom, we love your perspective. And a lot of people have been tuning in to the episodes you're on, which is, kind of a downer for us, but great for you. No, I'm just kidding. We love it. We love it. But Jonathan, why don't you give us a little bit of your background, real short version, and Dwight, we'll do the same with you, just so that our listeners and viewers can kind of get your background.
Yeah, for sure. I would say my formal kind of training was an internship. And I did an internship. And at that time, Michael Gungor was actually the worship pastor at the church that I was at. It's a large church in Grand Rapids. So I was there, and that's kind of like how I grew up, and I just let it kind of, I guess, rub off me. And that's how I grew a lot. And that it was a short year and a half. But after that, I started as a worship leader in a church on the east side of Michigan. Bay City, actually going to be leading in Bay City this coming Sunday. So I'm looking forward to that. And then I was at a church. I went back to the church that I was an intern at for about 6 years. I was one of the associate worship pastors there. And then for the last 4.5 years, I've been at a church here in a town in Holland, Michigan, doing that. So about 15 years total, over 15 years.
That's awesome, man. Dwight, how about you?
Yeah. So I never set out to be a worship leader.
Yeah.
So back in the mid 80s, I was in a Christian rock band, and we were just traveling around, and probably in the early 90s, people started asking us, hey, instead of just performing for us, could you lead some songs that we could sing along to? Right. So we were kind of in the rock star mentality, but little by little over the years, we just sort of morphed into worship leaders. It was really cool.
That is cool.
What was your band name?
Groders and Beal.
Yeah.
Yes. So
Local cult following.
Local Yokos, maybe more like. But so in 1994, I went on staff at Hope College. So I was leading worship 4 times a week on a college campus. So I had student worship teams. So I did that for 12 years.
That's cool.
And then I worked with Michael for 10 years at Central Wesleyan, a large Wesleyan church in our town. And now I work at a small church kind of out in the cornfield called Victory Point. So
that's awesome, man. That's very cool. And so you guys come with tons of experience. And that's what we want to really dive into today is the relationship. So I worked with Jonathan in Bay City at a church there for about 4 years or so, maybe 5, somewhere in that range. And then here in Holland, we worked together for about 3 or 4 years. You as the worship pastor, myself as a technical director. And then Dwight, you were at Central Wesleyan together with Michael from, I think you guys said 2005 to 2015.
15.
Yep.
Yep.
So you guys were in the trenches.
Yeah.
So all of us right here, we know what it's like
Yes.
to work together, to work through issues,
Yep.
and also to
Oh, yeah.
inspire one another and to do great things as well, right?
Yeah.
And to also champion ministry, champion the cause. And so we've gone through everything. Well, no, we probably haven't gone through everything. I'm sure Doug has stories for us. But and Doug, so why don't you, we kind of wanted Doug to be the moderator today. He's kind of going to be showing some presentation slides that kind of will lead the discussion between the four of us. Cool. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, they're meant to be just as an igniter, to start a flame. So if you see a graphic, I might have something to say about it, but what I really want to do is hear what your opinions are of whatever is on the screen at the time, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So with that, I guess we can start to share. All right. And
Boom.
There it is.
There it is.
Worship leaders are on fire.
Yes.
The texts are cool.
That's right.
yeah, well, worship leaders, word texts are not the sun. Everybody doesn't orbit around us, okay?
Yeah. Worship leaders obviously have bigger egos, according to this slide.
Yeah.
Obviously.
I'm not even sure if the scale is right, to tell you the truth, but who cares? It's just, what do you want to talk about that? So there's the first slide. What's your opinion of that?
I think it's accurate.
Mm. Wholeheartedly agree.
Okay. All right. So let's move on. Everybody see that?
Yes.
Who is that?
We got Spock and we got Captain Kirk.
Oh, yeah.
Which one's the worship leader?
Captain Kirk for sure.
For sure.
Why?
Because he's so good looking.
Spock's got the ears, right?
Right.
Spock's at the controls back there.
Yeah.
No, he's asking Spock to give him more monitor. It's
Yeah.
like,
He's like, really?
the reason I went with this is
What?
because creatives, art, and science, right? The science officer and the captain. The captain in this case is Kirk, who's kind of random, doesn't do things by the book. He's kind of like, in some ways, compared to what Spock's thinking is, not logical at all.
Yeah.
But somehow seems to get what he needs to get done. Spock, on the other hand, is just tech-centric. He's logical. He's a science officer. He's, man, you got to do it this way, Captain. It's the only way it can be done. And Kirk's, no, we're not going to do it that way. We're going to do it my way. Now, if any of these two guys was in charge by themselves without the other, the Enterprise would have crashed and burned years ago.
Nice.
But because of the two being dovetailed together with their strengths and weaknesses complementing each other, they're able to make a team that's like perfect. Otherwise, it wouldn't run as many seasons and as many movies as it had.
Right.
Exactly.
And then you get all the background characters too. You got Uhuru, and you've got Scotty in the engine room, and you've got all these support staff. But it just goes to show that we need complementary personalities and skills and strengths rather than all of the same kind of person doing things. That's all.
Yep. Absolutely agree.
And it makes sense.
Michael, you and I were just talking about
We
that
were just talking about
a few
that.
minutes ago. Maybe you should
So,
share
Should we
with
jump in with that, Doug?
yeah, jump in with it.
Go
Yeah.
for it.
Yeah, we were just talking about how when both Dwight and I started nearly the same month. So we were talking about how we had to learn each other's just characters and what each other wanted. Dwight is very much a free spirit at that time, and I was very type A. I wanted my details cut and right in the row, and if anything disrupted that, it was it rattled me. So both of us.
And I wanted Michael to just go with the flow,
I know,
man.
just roll with it. So what if we're adding another acoustic guitar player? and Sunday morning.
Yeah.
That are playing
That's so good.
that are playing the
Where did
same
this guy
exact
come from?
chords
Oh, I didn't
in the
tell
same
you.
exact octave.
Oh, I forgot to text you. Yeah, they're joining us.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, we're just adding this extra chorus at the end of this song. No big deal.
But I don't have another
We
Avion.
don't
to
need
set up.
lyrics. I don't want lyrics. They should know it's an old hymn. That's good.
Yeah.
Oh,
Anything else?
Well, should we stop?
no, we should keep going. Let's keep going because we're gonna get deeper into that rabbit
Yeah.
hole, baby.
Yeah.
So have you guys read this book at all?
Never read it, but you obviously heard of it.
Yeah.
Okay, you should read it because it's really about communication. In this case, how to communicate one versus the other in a relationship, men and women. In other words, my wife has a way of communicating. And until I read this book, it became really obvious what she was trying to say. I just never realized how she was saying it. And this book really opened up to me how men and women are wired differently. I know they do huge $1 million grants for scientists to study the differences between men and women. But there's really, you don't need $1 million to understand men are different from women, really. Just buy this book. This will help you. It's a lot cheaper than millions of dollars. One of the things she would say is, I think the trash is getting full. What's she really saying?
Take out the
it's
trash.
Overloading. Take it out. Yeah.
Take out the trash now.
So whether it's a man, in his simple way of understanding things, and a woman who's very complicated, supposedly, we have to figure out how people communicate if we're going to get the best out of the relationship. Just have to. It can't just determine how you're going to say something and expect that person's going to understand exactly what you mean. You have to understand who the listener is for you to be able to communicate what it is you're trying to communicate. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So whether it's a man and a woman or a tech and a worship leader, I have to understand that we speak different languages, and I have to understand your language and how you discern things that you hear from me to be able to communicate effectively.
Makes
So
sense.
he wrote another book after this called Mars and Venus in the Workplace. And it's a practical guide for improving communication and getting results at work. And it's basically the same kind of premise. We have to understand the personalities of the people we're working with if we want to get the most out of that team. So, good books. Should read them both.
Yeah.
It's good.
And any comments on that?
Yeah, I just remember, many, many years ago, learning about Dwight and who he was, and we all love him. But he can't.
Thanks, Michael.
He can't stand to hear people sniff. And so our tech director would set a little guy with a big nose on his.
A little potato head.
It was
Mr.
a
Potato Head.
Yeah.
It was just a potato head with a big nose on it.
And it reminded him to say, "Okay, don't sniff while Dwight's in the room." I'll never forget that.
Oh my God.
You know what? I think that what you're saying is, it's important to learn one another.
Absolutely.
And it is
Strengths and
it's
weaknesses.
a partnership. It's
Yeah.
a partnership. And I think that's one of the biggest things, Doug, that you're touching on is learning one another and just building relationship. I think relationship goes a long way to building trust.
Right.
And Christian and I have been we have a saying. He's married to my first cousin, who's like a sister to me. So we feel like we're almost family. And we hung out. We've been hanging out since 2002. We say we've been scheming since 2002 because we're always trying to scheme. But that relationship has gone a long way in our synergy, and I think that you bring up a good point. It's just learning one another, building relationship. I mean, that really helps. You don't always have to be best friends, but that respect has to be there, mutual respect.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think what's interesting about us, though, which doesn't always happen, like we've all had experiences where we either work, maybe start a business, go in on something with a friend and then it just doesn't work out for whatever reason. The pleasant thing about Jonathan and myself is that when we finally did work together, which was 4 years after we became friends, it was never weird, you know, and that was pleasant, you know, and not something that you probably thought about beforehand, but this far later, you're like, man, like, you know, you never know how it's going to go,
Right.
especially because normally the worship pastor, the worship leader is the superior, you know, in the work or in the org chart for a church. You know, you normally the tech person reports to the worship pastor, and so is that going to make things weird? But it never did. You know, we always had each other's back, and that was always really cool, man. So yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Let's jump in on that maybe a little bit.
You want to jump in? Go
Sure.
for it. Do it.
Yeah. So I don't know how many years into it was, Michael, but we reached a point where we're like, you know what? I'm not sure we're on the same page creatively. So Michael did what not a lot of sound guys would do is he offered to get together like 2 days after our rehearsal. We would multi-track our rehearsals. And he said, let's just sit down and let's listen to the rehearsals and let's just talk about the mix and tell me what you want to hear, you know? And I just felt very honored by that my tech guy would say, I want you to be happy, you know, and I want us to try to get on the same page, you know? So we worked at that for a couple of years.
Yeah, it was several years, I think. Every Thursday.
Yep.
Yeah, and we you know, we go through the entire mix, and you know, it got to a point too where, you know, you were honestly taking notes about musicianship versus mix most of the time.
Yep.
You know, so it was mutually beneficial, but
Absolutely.
it did. I mean, after a while, we got into a groove where it's like, okay, you're mixing how I would mix, and you know, we always differed on the snare.
I was just gonna say
every time.
Michael likes a fat snare, and I like a crack snare. You know?
Can you have both though?
Yeah.
Fat and crack.
You just have them next to each other, depending on the song.
Well, and I think it's worth mentioning too that, you know, we were mixing in a house that was really, it needed help, technically speaking. It was not treated acoustically. We had lots of problems with, you know, acoustical reverberation and 4 seconds of reverb time in the low end. All you techs out there.
What?
Yeah. So it took 4 seconds for, you know, 80 hertz to die off.
And how many did that house seat?
2,800
at the time. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was in the beginning of my career, it was not only trying to learn what Dwight wants, it was also, you know, managing. I called it problem management mixing because there was a lot of things physically that needed to be fixed, you know, and it took 7 years of, you know, me being on staff to where I finally, you know, we were able to pull that trigger. But you know,
when the room got treated and
and we got a new PA in there, and you know, things got.
It's a big trigger.
It's a big trigger.
Very expensive trigger.
Yeah. For a room that big, for sure.
It was $1 million upgrade.
Yeah.
So, you know, part of that is the process. You know, it's like, okay, how are we going to make this snare sound good, or, you know. So it was helpful to me for Dwight to be on the board with me.
Yeah.
You know, and do the multi-track.
And you're talking about just building trust in relationship. I mean, that is just so key, right? If as a worship leader, if you're not trusting your tech guy, and vice versa, it's just going to fall apart quickly.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Have you ever been to a church where maybe you were a guest worship leader, and you know, the worship leader or pastor from the church is there, or they're trying to, you know, get this thing going. Maybe we're there for a conference or something, and they say something, and one of them says a snarky kind of funny, joking comment.
Yeah, like
but it's
typical
like,
worship leader.
Yeah, you're like, yeah, sure, you're never, you know, like it's sarcastic, but like trying to be funny, but like, oh, you're never happy.
But there's truth in it.
But there's like truth in it, and it's like, I can't stand that, man. I'm like, that would never fly.
Yeah.
And I think the difference between Christian and I've worked with other tech leaders too. So, you know, Lewis is a friend, that I've come to respect, and we have mutual respect for each other as well.
Mhm.
But the thing with Christian and I is that we were just like buds. We were like play Call of Duty together, hang out, and our wives hung out. And so when we went to go worship, it was like a dream job.
Yeah.
It was like, I can't believe we're actually doing this.
Right.
I'm leading worship
Yeah, that's
here. We
cool.
have this amazing worship team, and there's like my BFF back there. He's like mixing, he's doing his thing. And what I loved about Christian is that he was always into it. His hands would be like, he would get lost in it, and he was like setting the example for the rest of the tech team.
Yes.
Right
and
on.
and
Cool.
all it was for us was like just a couple of kids trying to figure it out and like worship God with everything that we had. But that was, I think, secondary to our friendship. So that was like, that's just something special that'll never go away.
Right.
But it's good times, man.
Yeah, but building that trust is
Mhm.
important,
Yeah.
and getting buy-in for the rest of the team as well. They're going to look at the leader that's behind the scenes and the leader that's in front of the scenes, so to speak. And if there's something divisive there, like people are going to pick up on that.
Yeah.
Totally.
And
Absolutely.
it's going to impact your culture, man. Oh, and it's going to reflect with the end result.
Yeah.
And so I think talking about trust, that's huge, man. You got to trust each other and have each other's back. It's a two-way thing.
Absolutely.
So
Have you guys ever had like an off night, like at a rehearsal or something, where you guys weren't seeing eye to eye with with something in particular issue, and there was a bit of tension there?
Do you remember any specifics?
I'm sure there was, but I don't remember any specifics.
I don't either. So it must not have gotten really
Yeah.
bad.
That bad.
Right.
I was trying to think of something. I can't really.
nope.
I'd say
You
if it was probably beyond both of our control.
Yes. Like there was a number of Sundays where I went home because like before we started doing the services together, we had a really quick turnaround from a blended service with a choir and an orchestra to just a rock band. Right.
Let's
So
let's
That's
explain that real
crazy.
quick.
I remember that.
Okay.
That's crazy.
So we had Tuesday night rehearsal. We'd tear down and set up for Wednesday, which was first service. We'd run first service on Sunday morning because it was already set up
with the choir and the orchestra.
with the choir and the orchestra. So it's 80-piece choir with 25 roughly orchestra members. And during the message of the first service, we dropped our orchestra pit and we struck everything while he was preaching, brought it back up at the end, and we had about 20 minutes to sound check and make sure everything was plugged in right.
That's crazy, man.
And just do a massive, stage change where people are running around with keyboards and guitars and plugging things in and getting the Aviums going.
Sweating.
You're sweating.
Oh,
and you got a digital
Pit
board.
stains.
Yeah.
You're about to lead worship.
And you're about to
On camera.
And I cannot tell you how many times I'm just wanting to cuss inside, and then the lights go on, and I say, "Good morning, everyone.
Yes.
Let's worship God."
That's awesome.
It was a logistical nightmare and so stressful.
Oh,
Very
my gosh.
stressful.
Didn't the stage drop?
It did.
Yeah.
Yes. There's this orchestra pit right in the
Real
center.
natural pit. Yeah.
Yeah, that and it's unscrews. It just drops down to a storage area.
It's crazy, man.
How did you sleep on Saturday night?
So
I don't know if I would sleep well.
well, I can tell you there were a number of Sundays I would drive home just frustrated, because man, we put so much work into this, on Tuesday night, and then making sure we're tweaking everything, and then on Sunday morning, because of the fast turnaround, something inevitably is going to go wrong. Like you got a buzz here, or you got something that's not that the cord wasn't plugged in all the way because one stage tech volunteer just didn't quite push it in far enough or whatever.
Or the mic's in the wrong place. It's not in the same place it
Different
was.
DCA.
Yeah.
I don't care how well you organize that, because that was my duty, really, is to manage those volunteers and make sure, okay, I know he knows what he's doing. I know he can only do Aviums, or he can only plug in a monitor. So it's like, there's different varying skill levels during that logistical process. And man, I had to make sure every one of those was plugged in right, but inevitably something would go wrong.
So back to our original point, that usually I don't think he and I were frustrated with each other. We
No.
were probably more frustrated with the process,
Yeah.
you know,
Got it.
and it took years to say, let's not do that anymore.
Yeah. Let's change this process. Then we finally got service times to change so that we had, I mean, that's a huge deal too, to change service times for a whole congregation. You know, that's changing the whole layout of the church and children's ministry.
Especially
and
at such a
Right.
large
everything.
church.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah.
No, that's good though. That's good. Sometimes the friction is out of your control.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's why the relationship is even more important.
Even
at
more
that
important.
point, right?
Exactly.
Yes.
Because when you go through those situations, you want to know, oh, I know he's got my back.
Yeah.
And like, even if you have to say something hard, it's like, I still trust you in your heart,
Yes.
you know,
Yeah.
even though we're going to have like, you know, you're going to be like, hey, can you please do this real quick?
Yeah.
And not say please, not say thank you, just get it done
Yeah.
kind of thing. Like there's going to be moments like that.
Exactly.
But because I know your heart and I got your back, you got
Yeah.
my back, there's nothing about that, you know,
Mhm.
it's not going to be weird.
And I would say Dwight and I mean, we definitely had the common goal. We wanted everything to go smooth and seamless. I mean, that's what we strove for every week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
It only took us 10
10
years to get
years.
there, or 9 years to
and
get
then we
there.
both quit.
And then we quit.
I wonder why.
Once you hit Nirvana,
That's right.
Yeah.
you're out.
We're out.
We're out of here.
There are builders and maintainers. You guys build, and
That's
somebody
right.
else comes in to maintain. It's with pastors too. They build the church, then they leave because they're not really good at maintenance, you know.
Yeah, that's good.
But I gleaned a lot from what you guys were just saying, and I have a one-liner now. You're looking for those appropriate one-liners.
Yes.
I can fix more things with relationship qualities more than I can with technical qualities.
Mm.
If I have a guitar player who's playing too loud on the stage and he doesn't know who I am, I can't go up to him and say, turn it down,
Right.
because there'd be a conflict immediately.
Mhm.
You don't know what the heck you're talking about. This is my tone. This is my level. You don't know what you're doing.
Yep.
However, if we're spending time together, hanging out, coffee, barbecue at my house once in a while, listening to music that we both like together.
Yeah.
Relationships are formed outside of the workplace. They're not formed 10 minutes before a service.
Right.
Have to get out and get to know each other, their hobbies, the names of their kids, what he does for a living, all that stuff.
Yep.
So now when I go up to him and say, hey, Jimmy, do me a favor, man. It's a little loud coming off the stage today. Can you help me out? No problem, Doug.
Because I trust
Turns
you.
it down.
Just like that.
Yeah.
It's a relationship. It's not the tech.
That's a great point.
Mm.
So anyway, want to move on?
Yeah, let's move it on, baby.
Good one-liner.
It's a good
I like that.
one-liner.
Good one-liners. Yeah. I got a million of them like Rodney Dangerfield.
He was the best.
Who's that?
Who's that?
Get no respect.
Get no respect.
It's just a cool graphic, isn't it?
Oh yeah.
You've heard people talk about, oh, he's more right brain. He's more left brain. I'm the left brain. I'm a scientist, a mathematician.
The left brain looks so boring.
Exactly, doesn't it? and that's what a lot of people think techs are. They think they're left brain.
Hmm.
Boring tech nerds, pocket protectors, with pens, carry around a scientific calculator, figure out log,
Yeah.
I know root square. Who cares? You're a nerd. You look at meters all day. We're the right brain guy, creative, artsy, fartsy, has a flair for life.
Yeah. Lives in Neverland. Like just aloof.
Yeah. I do work with a tech guy, not a sound guy, but a guy who runs graphics for me, who just retired from Gentex. He's 74 years old.
Yeah.
So he was around when MS-DOS
Oh yeah.
was like
Oh,
the
wow.
thing.
Wow.
Yeah.
And he's like, I don't like computers nowadays because they try to think for you. I want to think for my computer, so I like to write the code,
And, he's going to be watching this next week.
All right. And if he does, he knows I love him. Pete, you're awesome. So Pete, he's like, he's switching the slides, right?
Yeah.
He can't feel when the slide needs to go.
Oh.
He has to know, so I literally have to be at my piano and I have to make a motion with my right hand. when the slide needs to go.
Oh, wow.
Because he's absolutely brilliant,
yeah,
Yeah.
but he cannot feel when the
Right.
slide needs to go.
yeah, totally.
Right?
Wow.
Totally. Yeah.
That's a
Yeah, I
classic
get
left
that.
brain, right brain.
Oh, yeah. So when I was at Sure, before they hired me, and maybe some of you have taken this test, but I recommend it for when you're putting teams together to think about this. It's called the Myers-Briggs test. Anybody ever take that?
Yeah.
Totally.
And it figures out your personality type, how you're wired, how you work with other people. And they determined that I am an ENFP. I'm extroverted, I'm intuitive, I'm kind of random. Because I'm primarily a musician. I'm not primarily a tech.
Okay.
So according to this, I'd be probably more right brain, but I have enough left brain to make me dangerous, right? And the truth of the matter is, we think with both sides of our brain. I know so many creatives were highly technical, and I know so many technical people were highly creative.
Yes.
So it goes both ways. You just have to know who that person is and what their strengths and weaknesses are, which is why Sure gave me the test. If he's this, I don't want to put him with 5 other ENFPs because they're all visionaries. There's no implementers.
Right.
There's nobody who would get anything done.
Right.
I've got a great idea. Great, who's going to do it? Right? So you mix people up with their personality types, so you get this amalgam of different strengths and weaknesses to form a team that's very productive. And it's really, really critical, at least in a corporate setting, and we can apply those same things to the church team as well. So,
I would just to stay on this for a second. I think it's critical to know each other. So we talked about trust, right, and how important that is. But then there's the extra step that you have to go to know one another. It's one thing to say, hey, we work together, but it's another thing to say, hey, man, like, how are you doing? Tell me about yourself. And the more time you spend with each other and you find out that what you're passionate about, and how you complement each other, like now all of a sudden you are a team, right? And you're for the same thing. And that's more than just trust. That's actually, I want to know you. And I don't know, you would assume that would happen in a church, right, Doug? You would assume
you would assume that it doesn't happen in the church. We always look for the 10 talent guy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's who our focus on. Who's the 10 talent guy that I can incorporate? What about the 5 talent guy? He'd be next on the list. Do we ever look for the 1 talent guy who we can invest in?
Yeah.
And maybe there's one thing that he can do that we can really utilize. And oftentimes we don't look for those people enough. And the other thing about the team building thing is it gets us away from our own self-focus, that I'm the leader. No, I'm part of a team. And together as a team, we're going to accomplish this goal that the church has of glorifying God, building up the church, all that. And we all become invested in it.
Yeah.
And especially in a small church, that doesn't happen at all because there's really nobody on staff to take care of that stuff. They don't have anybody full time. So it's up to volunteers to step up and say, hey, I'll help out. And whoever that volunteer is to start recruiting and soliciting and doing what needs to be done to build that team up. Big churches, they have staffs for that.
Yeah.
They pay money for it. But my heart's always been for the small church, which is 95% of churches. They're under 200 congregants every week.
Yeah.
So no, it's a common thing that there is no structure for that kind of thing.
Well, for me, 3 of the 4 churches that I've worked at, 2 were large and 1 was kind of mid-size. But all 3 of those, they did not pay for anybody outside of the tech director and worship pastor, really, for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
They might give you an admin or something like that. And so it was always about building into volunteers, right? Recruiting, training, and so you needed to have a roster. You had to have a deep bench, right? Because people get sick, they go on vacation. And you guys know here in Michigan, I don't know if it's like this in Jersey, Doug, but here in Michigan, in the summer, people are ghosts. They are out. They're like, I'm going to my cabin. I'm going to my lake house.
Cottage.
I'm out.
Yeah.
They have another church they go to in the summer.
Church on the 17th green, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Dwight, you brought up a point about just a minute ago, trying to think what you said exactly. Anyway, the point I was going to try to make was when I'm looking for people to solicit to help out, that one talent guy, sometimes a church will only allow certain people on the platform. Not enough churches audition, they should, but there's a lot of churches that don't have any talent. If you got a pulse, you can play drums, right? They've never allowed that for the pastor. But if I see a kid who's too young to be on the platform, I'm trying to recruit that kid for tech. I'm trying to say, hey, you're a musician. You probably have pretty good ears already because you're listening to music all the time. Did you ever think about producing? Did you ever think about having a home studio? I could use your help, wrapping cables, setting up the stage. Pretty soon I get that kid incorporated. Pretty soon he's on the board mixing. Pretty soon he loves mixing so much he doesn't want to be on the platform, and he's got a home studio in his house, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I'm talking about, bringing up from this level up to here. The point you were making was about the guy can't hit the slide on time.
Right.
With worship pastors, it's always frustrating because I'm already on the next verse and you're still on the last line of the last verse.
Right.
So I get musicians to do the lyric. I don't look for computer people to do the lyric, because a musician will get the flow of it.
Yep.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound.
Right.
So, so again, that's all. I'm looking for that. I'm not looking for 10 talents. In fact, 10 talents sometimes is the least committed person on the team.
Yes.
I've got the talent, so I don't have to show up for rehearsal.
Right.
Which sours the team.
Yep.
You're part of the team or you're not part of the team. If you miss 3 rehearsals, you're out. I don't care how talented you are. I don't need a guitar player that badly. I need somebody who's committed.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you got to set some things down so people are accountable to what you expect. Inspect and expect what you inspect, and inspect what you expect. So if I have expectations and I'm inspecting it and you're not meeting them, we have to have a conversation. That's all.
Yeah, that's a great point, Doug.
Write that one down too.
That's a good one.
Man.
Lines for days.
Yeah.
Rodney Dangerfield over here. All right, but no, I mean, every one of the places. Yeah, I mean, I'm a huge believer in job descriptions for volunteers, position descriptions. This is what you are expected to do. This is the times you need to show up. These are the heart, the qualifications that you need to have. And then there's also the, hey, if you are colorblind, you cannot be a lighting guy. Like, we need you to see color. That happened to me once. I am not kidding. We had somebody join the team. We're in the process of training them up. And then we're like, yeah, so when you're going to color, and we're training, and he's like, oh, by the way, I'm colorblind.
What did you say?
I was like, what? I'm like, man, we're going to have to find a different position. You got to see color.
Yeah.
And so, but at least having all that down on paper, you can go back to it. Like, hey, man, this is what you said you would do. And this is what we said we would do as well. It's a two-way street. We are going to support you. We are going to train you. Yeah. We are going to uplift you, right? And hopefully inspire you. And then in return, there are some things that you need to do. Yeah. So I'm a huge believer in everything being crystal clear. There's no guesswork. Yeah. And I think that helps people trust your systems. Say they have my best interest in mind, and it's not just a crapshoot,
Well, and I think it's important to remember when we're recruiting these volunteers, that was a ministry for me. I'm spending life with these guys. They're helping me change this pit. They're helping me set up on Wednesday. And I looked for the curiosity in the younger kids, because I wanted them to be self-motivated. I wanted them to be responsible and available and teachable. Those were the big 3 for me. But there were so many times where those conversations got so deep when you're wrapping cables and you're just talking about life. That's part of ministry.
It is.
As a tech.
It is.
So
no matter what position you're in, you're still a pastor if you're in charge of a team. We talked about that the last thing, pastoring your people. That's really what you should be most responsible for, taking care of them, nurturing them. Because even the Lord considers us sheep, which are really stupid animals. They're defenseless. They don't They don't do anything well at all. So they need a Lord.
Right.
They need somebody to like hold them together as a flock and say, hey, we're going to go over there. Follow me. Right. And if you can get people to watch for each other so that you don't have to do it all the time, to inspire in them to take care of each other and to cover each other, to watch their back, so to speak. Like the tech and the guitar player. I got your back. I'm not going to make you sound bad.
Mm-hmm.
If anything I can do to make you sound the best, that's what I'm here for. And I'll cover for you. I won't throw you under the bus when we hear the mix. Oh, the guitar player is too loud. Well, that's a sound guy's fault. No, we're going to cover each other. We got to work on that, right?
Yeah.
So, anyway.
Let's keep it going.
Yeah.
All right.
You
This
know,
is
you mentioned,
fun. I'm having fun, guys.
Yeah. You know, you mentioned, Doug, that musicians are the best slide operators. I would also say that musicians tend to be the best sound guys.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right.
Now, there are some sound guys who are amazing who
Yeah.
don't have history as musicians, but I've found, I mean, you're a bass player, right?
Mhm.
So if you have I've really enjoyed working with some sound guys who have spent a lot of time on the stage themselves. Because then when they're up there in the booth, they're like, I know what he's thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
he's thinking right now, he doesn't have enough of himself, so he's overplaying. So I'm
Mhm.
going to help him out here, you know, or,
Absolutely.
or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good.
Well, and we always talk the soundboard as a musical instrument.
Totally.
Absolutely.
You got to learn how to play it.
Right. Everything's technical. Playing
Yeah.
acoustic guitar is technical. Playing drums, there's technicality
absolutely.
involved, but it's musical, and the
Yeah.
mixer's the same way.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we're going to get into some of that as we go along here because the science and the art, they kind of merge. And as I was saying before, there are musicians who are highly technical and technicians who are highly creative. And when those things cross, I'm not saying you have to be a musician to be a great sound guy, but you definitely need to listen to a lot of music. And music has to be a passion in your life. If you're just listening to talk radio all week and then want to listen and mix on Sunday music, that's not going to bode well for anybody. So listen to all styles of music, get your ears developed. If I was studying audio engineering somewhere, every semester you have to study critical listening. It's just a course required to develop your ears so that you hear things in a proper perspective so you can create a good mix. And if those ears aren't developed, which is your best tool, I don't care what kind of gear you have, it's probably not going to bode well for the church if you've got somebody who doesn't listen to music, mixing music. So anyway, let's go on to the next one here. So art and science. And I can call this different words than art and science. I can call it leadership and management. Steve Jobs wasn't the guy who managed all the crews. He was the guy who created the vision for what we want to accomplish as a team. And then he was surrounded by implementers to get that goal fulfilled, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Visionary and implementer, same thing. Marketing and engineering, there's a dichotomy. I worked for a company that was so driven by engineering that they forgot the marketing part of it. It's like Sony. Sony is an engineering company. You'll have an engineer come up and say, hi, I designed a multi-track recorder the size of a postal stamp. And the marketing guys would, who's going to buy that thing? And the engineers would say, I don't know, but isn't it cool? And the marketing, we're not going to do that.
Right.
Or the engineers say, we absolutely need these 3 functions on this mixer. And the marketing guys say, too much money, it's going to add this much cost to it. Come up with one extra feature, we'll consider it. So there's always this interaction. Conflict, if you will, but the conflict has to be addressed, and we come up with solutions together. Director and editor, you got the director of the movie, and you got the editor who edited it a completely different way than the director wanted it to. That's not how I saw the picture. This is how I saw the picture. Music producer and audio engineer. I got some examples for that. Captain and science officer. Any of these things hit you guys in a different way, that when you see your role as a worship leader and as a tech, that interaction can be applied to any of these?
Yeah, we've had a lot of that, actually. Jonathan and I, we've made records together, so there's give and take. You know, Christmas comes around every year, Easter comes around, there's
Mhm.
big ideas, and it's like, okay, what's the budget? Yeah, I don't know if that's gonna work. And so you're always kind of shifting, but what you learn over time is like there's no bad idea. There's only the collaboration that really matters, because the not so great idea can inspire the incredible idea,
There you
right?
go.
And it can come from anybody.
Hmm.
You know, it can
Sure.
come from, you know, your lead pastor. It can come from the worship pastor, somebody else. It could come from a volunteer.
Yeah.
And so always remaining open, I think, is really, really important when you're working together. And I'm a huge believer in collaboration. And, you know, so siloing people off into their own office and only communicating over email, to me, that's not the most effective way to create the best results. Obviously, you know, there's going to be that's a part of every kind of job, or every, you know, as part of our world. But getting into the same room is critical, I think, to the success of just, I guess, executing
Yeah.
great ideas and creating something special.
Mhm.
That's where I think also what we were talking about, relationship and trust, is so key as well, especially when you're collaborating, and
Yeah.
a creative person has, is sharing their heart, and it's kind of like their baby, and so that you have to understand, like, hey, at the end of the day, be humble, and your idea is not going to be always the best idea, and it's probably going to be even better if you're willing to collaborate.
Yeah, and just going, like, so for us, a
Mhm.
great example is the last record that we made together, right? And there was three of us who were producing, and there were various amounts of people who were songwriters. But even halfway through the project, when you think this song is done, it's like, man, I just don't know about that line. You know, I know you wrote it, and I'm looking at you right in the eye, and I just don't know, man. I don't know if that's the best line. And at that moment, a person can either be like, well, I don't care if you don't like it, or, well, I think it's the
Hey,
best.
God gave me that line.
God gave me that
So
line.
back off.
Right.
That was Holy Spirit inspired.
But what's great is when you have this posture that says, okay, let's revisit it then. Let's revisit it because I trust you, right? I trust that what you're saying is good, is worth at least exploring.
Yep.
Mhm.
You know, and that's going back to that trust factor. You got to have the trust first, and in order for everything else to kind of, work. So
I love what you said about the volunteer coming up with an idea. Chris Tomlin in the day, and Jesse Reeves are good friends of mine way back when, in the when I was at Shure. And Chris told the story of that song. You probably heard it, Forever, right? Older song by Chris Tomlin. Forever
Let It
God is
Influence.
faithful, right? So Jesse said for years he could never get one word to finish the song. So they just would shelve it. And every once in a while they'd pull it back up and start going through it again. And they're stuck again in the same place. Forever God is faithful. Forever God is, what is the word I need there?
What is
And
God?
Jesse Reeves' wife walks in at that right moment, and she says, Chris, the word is strong. Forever God is strong. And he goes, that's it. And he finished the song.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
But
man.
she didn't get credit, did she? No,
She didn't get credit. Jesse did, though.
okay.
Yeah. You know, they're one.
They're one.
Yeah. No, but that's so true, man. And so you can't have ego, man. That's the thing. At the end of the day, it's like, it can't be about ourselves, in
Mhm.
any work environment. This goes into the corporate world. It's like, man, if you are going to work well with others, you can dictate. You could be a dictator at work and do this and do that, and I don't care, and I'm the boss and all of that. But if you lead through servant leadership and just have a humble posture and not make it about yourself, which I think we've all done. And when you're in the church
Mhm.
world, it's like, man, we're about people, not just the people who attend, but each other.
Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
And so I think that goes a long way. It goes a long way.
But I will play devil's advocate with you for a moment.
Let's do it, baby.
As you're called directors, so at times you have to direct. As a worship leader, I have to direct my team not to play anything they want to play all the time.
Mm.
Oh yeah.
I can say, hey, lay out on that verse. It's too busy.
Yep.
Oh, you don't like the way I play? Love the way you play, but not right now.
Yeah.
In music, it's like writing a score. You can't have all the instruments playing at once.
Yeah.
And directors sometimes don't, especially in smaller churches. Again, they're so wishy-washy that they're going to let anything just kind of fly. And as a sound man, trying to create or craft a mix when everybody is doing their own thing is just impossible. There's not a sound man in the world that can make that sound good.
No, that's a great point.
You're all fighting each other. So the director has to prevent them from stepping on one another and create a self mix, something that's going to be cohesive and sound like one instrument, not like 50. Right.
Well, coming off of that, Dwight, Michael, you guys want to, and we could also share, but like dive into that a little bit. Like, how would you approach, the bass player who's way too busy, right? And you're in this intimate moment of the song and the bass player's overplaying and you're like, what are you doing right now? Right. Or you're trying to do sound check,
That's what
right?
I would say.
And everybody's doodling on the stage and you can't do your job.
The drummer is notorious.
Yeah.
Oh. You want to go first, Michael?
I have some ideas, but well, I think it goes back to that trust thing with, the thing is we have tools now to help with that, because we're talking about the virtual sound check. That was your opportunity to hear the mix. It was also your opportunity to hear what the musicians were doing and correct it for Sunday morning, which made that super smooth, which ultimately helped me. I mean,
but there were times where Michael would pull me aside after rehearsal and say, I think you referred to this earlier, you got 4 musicians that are all playing in the mid-range.
Right.
And it's just mucking up the mix.
Right.
Can you help me out there? Can you do something about that? So that's really helpful. So then, you tell the guitar, can you capo up an octave? And then,
right.
I would say keyboard patches were a big deal.
Yeah.
Because I'd be like, can you move that up an octave or
Yeah.
down an octave?
Yep.
Sounds just like the electric.
Yeah.
Yep. But
and tie up his left hand.
Yes.
Tie up the keyboard player's left hand.
Yeah. Play with one hand, please.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's a tough thing when you got a super talented musician who, like a bass player, who's just like all over the map.
And he's good.
And he's so good. Or
Yeah.
she is just so good.
Yeah.
And then you're like, can you just not be as good right now?
Yeah.
Because I don't need to be that good.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's
Can you
why
be a little less awesome.
I think that's why the audition process is really key. And in that process is where, once you're seeing like, okay, this person has it to be on this team at this level, is where you have those conversations and where you share to them. I know for us, we our core values and our kind of our guardrails, our guidelines, our plumb lines are it's like this is how we do, why we do what we do, and so they have to understand. It's like, for you gotta know, hey, there's no drama on this team. Like we're mature, and we're gonna serve one another. We're going to be humble. And if you do hear something, if you do see something, you want to nip it in the bud right away, usually probably in private, before anything escalates. But I know for me, it's like, I think if you can have that conversation right away, when they're first starting to be on-ramped. I know for us, like we would have them come to several rehearsals to kind of get the culture of the rehearsal and to help them understand, like, hey, I am going to be that director. I am going to say to the drummers, like, hey, we're not, it's no snare quite yet. It's just the 4 on the floor with the toms. Of course, it's worship with 4 on the floor and a tom groove. Or whatever, the keys players, like, hey, just do right hand octaves, don't play anything with your left hand at this point. But then they're also seeing that, sitting down, they're watching, they're seeing, taking in the culture of the rehearsal, taking in the fact that, okay, this person's going to ask me to play some things, and am I going to be humble enough to receive that? Because you're helping them understand, like, hey, we're producing this and we're building dynamics. That's what we're doing. And we don't, even with vocals, we produce vocals because you don't want it to be, as great, and as great as the Gaither band is, like, you don't want it to be like 4-part harmony from the beginning to the end of the song for every single song. So
and you don't want unison through every part of the song either, with 8 vocalists.
Or sometimes
I need one vocal
yeah,
right now.
Yeah,
please.
sometimes you just have one person start the song off by themselves, you know?
Yeah.
I kind of described laying out in the respect of playing in concert band in high school. I was the piano player in jazz band. But they had a weird policy. If you wanted to be in jazz band, you had to be in concert band. The problem was I didn't play any concert instrument. So they taught me trumpet, right? Not a stupid policy. I learned trumpet, and I was probably good enough to be an 8th chair if there was such a thing, but I was 3rd chair. And I told people my music consisted more of bars of rest than it did of notes.
Yeah.
So sometimes I'd be counting for 32 bars, not playing a thing, you know, to losing count because I was like flirting with the flautist, you know, winking at her. And here comes my part. It's an 8th note on the upbeat of the 3rd beat, right? So I miss it. Go bed. Right. Why can't we tell our musicians to lay out and not have them be offended? Or kick and snare, no fills.
Exactly.
Or kick and bass together.
Exactly.
You know, it's like
Absolutely.
Yeah, if you're being offended by me asking you to do this, you know, try to play in a school orchestra.
right, exactly.
Yeah, or anywhere professionally.
Yeah,
really.
I was allowed to improvise on Beethoven's 9th. Okay, it wasn't left to interpretation. You follow the notes on the paper. Well, we can do the same thing with On Song or Planning Center, whatever we want. Here's the original record I wanted you to hear, but we're not doing it that way. We're going to do 10,000 Reasons my way.
Right.
We're going to take ownership of it, and here's the musicians that we have to play it, and here's how I'm going to arrange it. We don't think we spend enough time arranging things, which would help the sound man immensely if the team was self-mixing.
Yeah. Another point I wanted to bring up is the relationship between the tech leader and the worship leader and how they work together to lead the team. And what I mean by that is there would be times where I would have to coach the band. Like I would do it from the talkback mic, you know, but we already have this relationship between Jonathan and I where we trust each other.
Yeah,
or
you
Jonathan,
got to earn that.
you got to earn that, right?
Yeah.
And so we've already had that. And so I would talk to the electric guitar player during sound check, or you know, I would ask about patches as well on synths and keyboards, or even the drums. Like, hey, are those is that low time tuned or whatever the case is?
Bass guitar,
right?
Tone.
But Jonathan, on the other hand, would also be like, hey, the slides are not coming up on time. Can we go ahead and practice this real quick? You know, and so he's always speaking to the person who's in the back video room, and not going through me first. But we earn that with each other. We have those by name, like, hey, Elijah, hey, I need you to just speed up a little bit on the slides or whatever the case is. But that creates, when it's done well, it can create even more fluidity and even more buy-in with the team, because now the person running slides, they don't seem invisible to the worship leader.
Right.
They feel a part of what's happening.
Yeah, they're actually they're like, oh, I'm part of the team.
Right. Oh, and he knows my name.
Yeah.
Right. That's a big deal.
By Tommy Walker, right?
Yeah. And so,
he knows my name.
I love that song.
Good.
All right, man. We're about to have some worship up in here. Hold on. Let me mix it real quick.
Probably going to do that this Sunday, right, Jonathan?
Bring it back, baby.
I used to lead that, dude. That was a good one.
Yeah.